Good afternoon. Jihad El Jihad with another entry into the autobiography of a Detroit hustler. This chapter is entitled Stand Up Guy Part 2, Sheila. This chapter is dedicated to Sheila. She's the mother of my youngest daughter, Ebony. Sheila was killed in 1988 outside of what was then Perry Drugs on the corner of Schoolcraft and Telegraph. Witnesses say that two masked men with automatic rifles surrounded the car that she was in with her companion and fired. The police counted over 100 bullet holes in the car. She's no longer with us. May she rest in peace, and may Allah have mercy on her soul. So, here we go. This is to Sheila, Stand-Up Guy, Part 2. It was Christmas Eve. Oh, one more thing. This particular video is somewhat longer than the previous videos that I've put on YouTube. That being the reason being for that is that there are a lot of events that transpired that led to Sheila and I meeting and establishing a relationship. In order for you to understand the stand-up guy that Sheila was, I have to first break it down into how this came about. So it's a little longer. Here we go. Sheila, stand-up guy. It was Christmas Eve morning. Sheila, myself, and my baby daughter Ebony were all sleeping together that night. The phone rang early in the morning. I answered. It was Aaron. "Look outside," he says. I look out. There was what was considered to be an historical blizzard that morning as far as Detroit's weather was concerned. He says, "It's a perfect day, man. Perfect day." I look out. I said, "Fuck it. I'll try it. But I ain't promising nothing." So I had to be real quiet. I didn't want to wake them up, especially Ebony. Because if she was awoke, she would certainly wake Sheila up. And I didn't want to explain what I had in mind to go do that morning. I didn't want to hear it, and I knew she was going to be worried to death until I came back. That is, if I got back at all. As I mentioned before in the chapter, The Naked City, New York, New York, I had a friend named Kenneth, KT we called him. He had a brother named Aaron. KT had gotten a job while I was locked down the last time before this when I came home in 1977. He had gotten a job and a good job and was married. So I didn't see him as often as before, but his brother Aaron and I were always together. This guy had heart. He was intelligent, articulate, and had a lot of larceny. Just the kind of guy I was used to and could do some things with. KT had slowed down, although very slightly. He had hooked up with the woman that was eventually to become his wife, and as I said, he had a job, so he wasn't around us as much, and consequently, Aaron and I hanging quite a bit. This association proved to be years later one of the most glaring miscalculations of a person I have ever made in my whole entire life. In many ways, he and his brother KT were very much alike. My miscalculation was in not recognizing the ways in which they were different. And it was in that miscalculation that I was to eventually experience the two events that would forever change and have lasting influence on my life and in my way of thinking and in looking at people. My whole system of judgment changed as a result of this person's relationship with myself. I must admit, though, the relationship he and I had was for a long, long time very beneficial and prosperous, as well as enjoyable to a certain extent. We did a lot of shit, shot a lot of moves, and made a lot of money. But I passed up on a lot of things I could have done. A lot of people that wanted to involve me in some situations that would, in a number of things that would have been lucrative in many, many ways. But 90% of the people I came into contact with also came into contact with Aaron because he was always there. And 99% of those people didn't like him or trust him and didn't want to be involved with him, period. I was questioned on so many occasions, why you fuck with him? And I was told by more than just a few on so many occasions, Red, that nigga ain't your friend. In the school that I'm raised in, loyalty is paramount. You give it because you expect it. One of my assets, and probably one of my faults as well, is that when I become involved in a relationship with anyone, business or personal, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, I start that person off as 10 in respects to the level of loyalty and trust they can expect from me. And I expect the same in return. Those levels only drop as a result of their actions, not mine. But before those levels drop and hit rock bottom, there's a cutoff point, hopefully. And I say hopefully because by the time those levels reach that rock bottom, should it get that far, something bad is going to happen. And depending upon what the actions are that take that level down, it can go from 10 to 0 at one time. In that case, somebody coming up short for real, and they ain't going to know it until it's too late. Well, Aaron never got to rock bottom. He should have, but the only reason he didn't is because I had so much love and respect for his brother, KT. I got those messages from everybody the two of us dealt with, and most importantly from the people that were closest to me, my dad and Sheila, my baby's mother. And as I said, a host of others, I would pass it off and say, y'all just don't know him like I do. He all right. He got his ways, but I can't trust him. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out they knew him better than I did. They saw something in him that I refused to look at, and I pay attention to, and I paid for it. You live, hopefully, and you learn, hopefully. There was an undercover drug. Well, let me stop here. There was an undercover drug operation that flourished in the city of Detroit through the 70s and 80s called Young Boys Incorporated, YBI. In later years, that organization ended up being a multi-million-dollar heroin distribution enterprise. But in 1977, it was still in its infantile stages in comparison. At the time I paroled from Jackson in 1977, Janice was incarcerated in the federal women's prison at Lexington, Kentucky. She had a nephew, Chip, that was always my little man, and he was now about 16 going on 40 and selling drugs in the area, in the neighborhood of Joy Road and Broad Street. They had a pretty good road going too in the hood. No one could have foreseen that how it was going to grow into what it became, but even in those early stages, the potential for making money was obvious. I told Chip, look man, I got to connect out in L.A. I can make a trip out there, bring back some top-notch grade A Mexican mud. We can cut it, turn the mixed jive, and make some money. He was all for it. Now, I got to make good on my end. I had been home for about a month and I was on parole, and I wasn't getting the kind of money that I needed to get at that particular time. Plus, I had a PO that was on my ass. He insisted I had a job or go back to prison. And to be truthful, working just wasn't on my agenda. So, as a result, things were pretty tight. But I wanted to make this move, and my eyes were peeled. I was on a mission. Somebody, somewhere, was going to come up short. Aaron knew someone who had just received a check for $5,000, and he knew somehow that the check hadn't been cashed. And he knew somehow where they kept the check in their house. That's the kind of guy he was. He would catch on. He would watch shit like that when he came around people. Notice shit that really wasn't his place to notice. He even did it to me. It used to irritate the fuck out of me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who knew or who noticed that quality about him. And I'm also sure in hindsight that that was more than likely one of the things that made people he came across very uneasy about him. Looking back, I can also see clearly how sneaky this dude was in a slimy kind of way. Nobody, and I mean nobody, that I knew trusted him. Now, to me, loyalty is blind, just like they say love is. And mine is because when I say I'm loyal to somebody, I mean it. So all these actions, all these factors of his personality that perturbed me on as well as everyone else, I turned a blind eye to him. Aaron makes the move and breaks into the people's house, steals the check, and comes back. Problem was, he never said that the check was in a woman's name. All the time, I'm thinking between the two of us, one of us is going to go cash the check, catch a bus. We're going to catch a bus to L.A. At that time, I could get an ounce of Mexican mud for about $850, top notch. I was going to hook it up with mixed jive with the seller's dope, distribute it to Chip and his crew, and start getting paid. I knew where to bust the check at. KT had put me up on an apartment building in the Cash Corridor years ago where the manager was known for keeping very, very large sums of money. He was an owner also, and he was half blind. And more importantly, very gullible and an A1 trick, who had no problem blowing hundreds of dollars on a hooker. You could come to him with any type of check, rent an apartment in the building, or at least do the paperwork like you were renting one. He would bust the check for the amount for the apartment for a fee. He had some deal going on somewhere where he could get paid off the check in whatever condition the check was in, stolen or legit. So it was always my intention to take it there and cash it. And it still was, only now I got to involve another person, a female. And of course, she got to get paid for her services. There was a guy from the neighborhood I knew whose initial is D. That's as far as I'll go with his name. And he had a girl whose initial is A, and the same goes for her name. He was living in a rooming house upstairs over a restaurant on Livernois between Glendale and Buena Vista. I'd go and pay him a visit. I was somewhat familiar with him, but I didn't associate him on anything like a regular or extensive basis. He wasn't my style of dude, although I did kind of like him a little bit. But basically, he was all right, but he was just such a scary dude, ultra scary. And being that way, he was of no use to me in any of my hustles because the shit I was doing took heart. It took brains and guts and nerve. If you lacked any one of those at any particular certain time, you wasn't going to make it a minute. They'd end up finding your body cut up in different pieces all over Wayne County with a bullet hole in each part. So he just wasn't of any use to me. And as scary as he was, I found it amazing that his girl was at least, if not more, scary than him. These two were obviously made for one another. But I can't say this enough or often enough. This cat Aaron proved to be a major flaw in my judgment, and it still took me years afterward to open my eyes and my brain and see it and wake up from my illusion. I gotta admit that in respects to being slick as I thought I was, he had to have been slicker. Old saying in the game says, when you see a sucker, you work him. Well, he saw one, and he was on his job. I don't care who you are, how down you are, how tight your shit is. Anybody can be had by that one or two individuals that you are inevitably going to run across in your life. Just pray that the price you pay you can handle, and in my case, live through. And if you come out of it with at least the probability of coming out whole again, you're blessed. I did, and I was. She finally agrees, and it's on and popping. But now the thing is, we need a ride. In my earlier chapter, Joy Road, I mentioned a cat named Reggie and said he was a cat that I would talk about later. Well, this is later. Reggie owned a boutique shop on Livernois in Fullerton. What I'm getting ready to do now is break down the history that Reggie and I had and the original beef that we had before the check situation. So bear with me. Reggie owned a boutique shop on Livernois in Fullerton back in 1973. My man Arab and I had a shop on a same type of shop on Joy Road. We weren't in any competition with one another as far as money was concerned because our shops were somewhat of a distance between one another. But we were in competition as far as status and image was concerned. Flings and Things, Reggie's shop, was across the street from two very well-known clubs in Detroit, the Fox's Den Strip Club and BJ's Mardi Gras. Flings and Things had been open a couple of years longer. It was bigger, it was more well-known, and it made more money being across the street from those two clubs, BJ's Mardi Gras and the Fox's Den, so it was a prime location, even better than Joy Road. And to top all that, Reggie used to have girls in bikinis dancing in his front window at night, with the shops lit up like it was, and them stallions dancing in the window on Livernois. Needless to say, I'm envious, because he was clocking dollars. Before I go into how Reggie was instrumental in the business about the check, let me tell you about this original beef. Reggie and I had words through the past a couple of times, and as I had gotten older and more physically capable, although he was always larger and taller than me. In the wild, when two lions face off, they try and avoid actual combat if possible. Each one is aware of the other's capability, and if the fox ain't worth the chase, let it go. There'll be another time. One day, my regular connect was out of weed, and I was out of town, and I was out of weed for the shop, Redskin Rapskis. I needed a pound, and Reggie also sold weight. Rab, which is what we call my partner Arab. Rab and me were going to hang out that night anyway at BJ's and the Fox's Gin, so I decided while we're out over that way, I'll cop from Reggie. I didn't like copping from Reggie. First of all, I didn't like him anyway. Second, he always charged more, overcharged for weed that wasn't even any better than the weed I was getting on Monterey. But I didn't have a choice right now. And that night I happened to be driving. I owned a royal blue Mercury Monterey with a black vinyl top and blue fabric interior. Sharp ass car. I pulled up out front. It's Friday night. It's pretty cold. Street was busy. Flings and Things was lit up like Christmas. And there was a fine, dark-skinned, thick to death, sexy ass girl dancing in the window. Her name was Poochie. And she was attracting a whole lot of attention. As soon as Arab and me got out of the car, I looked up at her, and our eyes locked. I was sharp as a motherfucker, because I was out that night to trap and catch something anyway. I had just been permed and curled earlier that day, and my copper-colored curls was busting out from the bottom of my Borsalino. I was wearing a gangster length tweed overcoat. Rab was sharp as hell too, and she was looking hard. Reggie was inside handling some business with some custos near the front of the shop. He knew I was coming, and he knew why. And he was looking too hard. We walk up to the door. You had to walk up in between two long windows leading to the front door. And there was a girl on each side in each window dancing. But as pretty as both of them were, it was Poochie that had my attention. And I had hers. I stopped in between the two windows and stood there so as to block the wind, and stood there and watched her dance. And of course, You know, she put a little extra in it for my benefit. Arab didn't stop. He went on in. Now remember, I'm the one that's here on the business, but I'm the one that's standing outside. And they're both looking at me as if to say, what you gonna do? And I really didn't give a fuck because I was looking at that ass. I had seen her dance before at the Den and at the Brass Key. We had seen one another, but since I wasn't the type of guy that was going to stick my fingers up her butt with a few dollars in between them or offer her a few dollars for some back room or some parking lot time, we never exchanged many words. Talking to me wasn't going to be beneficial for her, not when there was money around to be made, so she never really paid me much attention. But Reggie's window wasn't the same as a strip club. And now, the attention I'm getting told me, now it's time for them few words. But first, I got to handle my business. Reggie opens the door, looked out at both of us, grim as a motherfucker. He said, come on, man, what you gonna do? I ain't got all night. Now, I'm determined in my mind now that I'm about to show my ass. I'm about to let this nigga know that there's more than one player in this house. And I'm one of them. We went inside, stood around the outside of the area of the shop, just kicking game for a few minutes before we went to the back room to handle our business. All while we're standing there kicking the game, I'm noticing Poochie glancing over at us, and me in particular. And they were noticing it as well, especially Reggie. But that was his problem. When we came out from the back room and we approached the door, and we approached the front door, there's a door behind the counter that opens up to the display window where Poochie was dancing. I stopped right there. She looks at me, and I motion her. Come here. She stopped dancing, came to the door and opened it and said, what? Reggie is furious. He said, bitch, what the fuck is you doing? Get your black ass back up in that window and work. She looked at me. I said, you want to go with me? Go get your shit. She stepped down out of the Reggie window. Now, Reggie is hopping mad now. I mean, he's steaming insanely of me. And he started to approach her in a very intimidating physical manner. Before he got close, I said, baby, if you going with me, don't worry about shit. You better speak up now. She said, yeah. I said, hold up, back up, guy. Cop and blow. You know the name of the game. I just copped, you just blew. That's my woman now. Let's go, baby. She grabbed up her clothes from the back room and put on her coat over her bikini. She was still afraid of Reggie and didn't want to take time to dress. Ran out the front door looking at me like I was a knight in shining armor, and we left. If Reggie's eyes could have been bullets, I'm sure I would have had bullet holes in my back. I had showed my ass. Now, I had actually showed my ass. Now, the aftermath of this happening is another story within itself. But now, back to the check. So since all of us were familiar with one another, and he was driving, Reggie ends up being the ride. Flings and Things had been busted a year before that, and Reggie had done a year's time. Now he was more susceptible to being paid for services such as being a driver. So here's the plan. I would wait across the street on Cass Avenue. There used to be a restaurant named Shin Tiki there, and it had some stairs in front. It was closed during the day, and I would sit there from across the street from the apartment building. They would park in front. I could keep an eye on them, and they couldn't leave without me knowing it. The two of them went in. She felt safer with Reggie acting as her boyfriend. Do the paperwork, sign the check, get the change, and come on out. Everything was going just as planned. Until, from my vantage point across the street, I see a big 4-car pull up out front, sit for a couple of minutes, and then they all get out and go inside. I'm thinking, how in the fuck did they fuck this up? What the fuck did they do? I know I can't be sitting there in plain sight when they come out, when they get marched out. One of them is sure to point me out. It's time for me to get the fuck on. I left. Quick. I'm walking up Elizabeth toward Grand River and said, and I'm telling you, I'm hot, and it ain't from the weather. How the fuck could they fuck up this bird's nest on the ground? After quite a few minutes, I'm able to flag a cab. I'm going over to tell D something's wrong with his woman and he need to go check on her. But when I pull up in front of the cab on in the cab on Livernois in front of his building, what do I see? Reggie's car parked outside. I'm thinking they had gotten busted. I'm thinking when the police pull up in front of the building and went in, it had to be for them. That was just too coincidental. But that's exactly what it was, coincidence. The police were there on an entirely different matter, totally unrelated. And when I'm buzzed in, it took a minute. It took a minute too long for them to buzz me in. I could see all three of them sitting there, and two of them had a very strange look on their face. But Reggie spoke up with his usual boisterous, arrogant bravado. He said, "What the fuck happened to you, man? What happened? What you do? Call the police on us, man?" It was that statement that I knew from that point right there was some shit in the game. Everybody knows I ain't about to call the police for nothing on nobody. And in this case, why would I? He should have come up with something better than that. I know now they had my money, but I couldn't prove it. Their story was when they saw the police, they left before they got the change. They thought it was a setup. Reggie and I were as close to doing it as I could stand. I knew, but I wanted to be sure of what I knew. And when not if I found out he had just reached that 0 point. Something bad was about to happen. But first, I was going to have to stack the deck in my favor. At this point, even with D's cowardly ass, I was outnumbered. By him and his girl sticking with Reggie's story, it was plain at the moment he was more worried about Reggie than he was about me. And that was about to be a very big mistake for him. But at the moment, that fear of Reggie could have been enough to compel him to help Reggie if the shit got on right now, and I was alone. They held all the trump cards, but not for long. I went and got Aaron and my pistol. All I had at the time was a bullshit ass 25 automatic that was broken. Sometimes it would fire, sometimes it wouldn't. But if I had to pull the trigger 27 times I only had 3 rounds in it. If I had to pull the trigger 27 times to get those 3 rounds off, them 3 each had a brand new bullet hole in the ass coming. Compliments to me. A couple of hours later, the two of us go back, and I pay D and his girl a visit. They were obviously high as a motherfucker. When I had left earlier, they claimed they didn't have no money. So how did they get so high? Plus, me and Aaron hadn't been buzzed in by them. They didn't know we were in the building. Someone else let us in, and they hadn't had a chance to clean their shit up yet. When we walked right into the room, A looked up. His girl looked up at us like she was about to shit and piss all over herself. The rooming house had a communal bathroom, and D had left the door cracked while he was down the hall using the bathroom. We motioned her to be quiet, and to make sure she did, I pointed that pistol in her direction, and we stood behind the door. There was money on the bed, empty and full dope packs all over the table, and drug paraphernalia. Jackpot. Jackpot for me, snake eyes for them. In walks D. When he closed the door behind himself and saw us standing there, his knees visibly weakened, and he started sweating. It was hot and muggy anyway, and he looked like he was trying to decide whether he was going to faint or have a heart attack. Very calmly, I asked, "Where y'all get all the money from, man? And if you give me a stupid answer, you're going to lose a kneecap, because I ain't asking you but once." His girl is sitting on the side of the bed. He sat next to her. She was wearing a white sundress. She started screaming. She half screamed and started crying, laid back on the bed, pulled up her dress, and started begging, "Please, I'll do anything you say." I said, "Bitch, shut up, sit up, and pull your shit down. I ain't here for that. I want my money. You ain't got enough pussy to pay for this bill. You better come up with you better come up with my money real quick, cause I'm about to start squeezing." Fortunately for them, they had no doubt that I was serious, and they didn't test it. They started talking. She said when the police came in, they were already on the way out. The police were there for an entirely different matter, and when they came out and didn't see me, Reggie already figured out what had happened. She said she wanted to wait to see if I was coming back, to see if I was in the area and was coming back. It was a nice thought, but I don't play that shit. But Reggie convinced her that I had deserted them, so I didn't deserve no money. They could split it. They had supposedly paid for the whole year, which left a little less than $4,000 out of the $5,000 check, of which they already had spent $500 of their split on drugs and some money she had given her mom for her two kids. The more she says, the more I hear, the more angry I get. But that anger is slowly shifting from these two to Reggie. It was plain that he had manipulated and bullied her and him. Without him, the whole situation would have had an entirely different outcome. So, as far as I'm concerned, plus, he's got the rest of my money. The focus is now how to get to him. It wasn't going to be easy. If I was going to be involved, he was going to be real careful on account of what he had just done, and he would certainly be on his guard. I needed to figure out a way to pull his pants down and spank that ass before he knew about it. Reggie was still in the weed business and was also selling THC. That would prove to be my angle to pull him out on my turf and be in control of the situation. Aaron and I walked over on Martindale after collecting the rest of my money from D and his girl and left. We even let them keep the dope and the cane they were using for their little private party. At least they kept all that me and Aaron didn't use while we were there. I told them since they had come clean, they got a pass. No extra bullet holes to patch up in your ass this time. But they would have to help me. They helped Reggie work me, and he left them to my mercy. It's only fair, since I gave you a pass, that you return the favor, and I would do you another solid. I put together a scheme that would also absolve them of any involvement. But D was going to have to endure a knock upside the head to make it look good. That was better than the bullet hole, and that would make it look all bad for him. Difficult as the choice was, fair is fair. He said he was going to have to pay I said that he was going to have to pay a price, so the choice was his. He agreed. Nobody chooses a bullet. We went and talked to Wolf and Lil Coon, two original YBI members, real thorough young cats that were getting money with their little young ass. They couldn't have been no more than 16, 17 years old. I told them that I needed to get Reggie over there on the Dale. I was about to tear his ass out the frame. I would make sure they got a cut. I needed to call him from their phone. I would set up a sale for a pound of weed and a quantity of THC pills. I would play it like I didn't know anything about how to price THC by weight or even what it looked like. So the only way he can make the sale would be he would have to bring the product to them himself, and I would have to be with him. He bit. I told him, I'll meet you back at D's room in 20 minutes. I couldn't contain myself. Finally, he was going to get what I thought but he thought I couldn't give him. I had waited years for this. I rode in the front seat with Reggie. Aaron was in the back. Aaron, with his little vicious ass, had an elbow pipe. You know, the kind you take out from under the sink. Fat, thick, and as a pipe should be, hard and solid. It's about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. Martindale is relatively dark, and we're pretty much up in the middle of a pretty long city block. As soon as the three of us get out of the car, we struck. I pulled out the pistol and smacked him across the face. He was caught completely by surprise. Where's my money, motherfucker? Aaron is behind him. Before he can even gather himself and answer or respond, I heard a thump. Reggie's chest looked like it was about to pop out of his shirt. Aaron had just hit him between the shoulder blades with that pipe, and his whole body looked like it was trying to fold down the middle backwards. If he had been made out of paper, he would have tore himself in half. He didn't know whether to look to watch me with that pistol or turn around and see what the fuck that was that just hit him in the back. He tried to look back and smack across with the face with the pistol again. He stumbled, straightened up, and I heard boom. Aaron said, "Pay attention to me, motherfucker." And he let him have another one between the shoulder blades. Again, this must have happened about 5 times. He was mad and in pain. Tears were coming in his eyes, and the look of pure hatred was on his face. Unbelievably, he had very close to the amount of money that was his split on him. We took that. We took the pound of weed and the bag of THC pills. He sat on the front fender of his car, lit a cigarette. As I walked off, he was watching me and putting the cigarette to his mouth. Quick as a cat, Aaron spun, pivoted, and stole him right in the jaw. Bam! The fire from the cigarette exploded like fireworks, and he fell across the hood of his car, out cold. That's how we left him. Forgive me for saying this, but from the shit that was about to happen, many times in my life, I wished I had gone and killed him. We stopped, picked up some cane, 4 bottles of Wild Irish Rose, and went back to Dee's room. As I said, my name was good in the street, and it must, and in most respects, and for sure I could. So I went back there to give him his cut, as I promised him that I would. I remember we had just caught the beer and wine store across the street, so it must be around this time, about 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody did a couple of blows apiece. Everybody did some cane. Everybody had their own bottle of Wild Irish Rose. I finally felt vindicated. I was tired. I had that sense of relief. I sat in front of the window, in this big chair in front of the window, smoked the joint, and sat there and chilled out. That choice of seats was getting ready to cost me so dearly, I still to this day pay for that very mistake. Certain types of intoxicants don't sit well with me. I can handle the heroin and the cocaine and the weed, and to some extent the alcohol, although I don't like to drink much. But THC, though, although it is the chemical contained in marijuana, is more like a psychedelic high, a head high. Not my type. But for me, the reason that night I took some, I don't know. But needless to say, I was loaded. I was full of every intoxicant at my disposal. And I remember thinking to myself that I was really too high off of too much shit to really enjoy it. I just sat back in that chair, closed my eyes, and tried to wait on one of these drugs to run its course so I could regain some of my composure and some of my sanity. So there I sat in the window. I remember opening my eyes briefly it's around daybreak, and looked around the room. Everybody was either nodding or half nodding from the heroin, and with all the excitement from moving around, we were all pretty much comfortable, and we were all pretty comfortable. Now the sun is completely up. It's right around 6 a.m., July 23rd, 1977. I'm coming down slightly, but I'm startled out of my nod by the sound of several car doors slamming and voices. There that motherfucker is. I had sat in that window because it was hot and muggy, and as full of drugs as I was, I needed as much air as I could get. But I had never meant to stay there or in that window that long. And as I looked down, I now realized that both of them were two very, very bad mistakes. Because as I looked down, here's Reggie, all bandaged up like the mummy, with two car loads of guys, and they were all looking right at me in the window. I shouted, "Aaron, wake up, man. Here they come." Nobody in the room needed to be told who they was, especially Aaron. Everybody came out of whatever stupor they were in. Quick. Aaron went to the window. I thought it was to look out and see what was happening down below. There was a staircase at the other end of the hall. I started that way. I said, "Come on, man." But the room we were in was located right next to the stairway coming up from the front door, which by now they have successfully kicked off the hinges and were mashing together at the bottom about to come up. By the way, there's 6 of them, 3 to each car. As soon as I took 2 or 3 steps out of the room, I'm in their field of vision. Bam! A shot rings out. I duck back into the room, reach around the corner, pow! Let one go. The 25 didn't jam. That only stopped them, though, momentarily. I turned to go back into the room. The only way in or out of the room is the door. And I'm standing there, and I'm standing in the fucking door. D and his girl are hiding between the wall and the bed, and she's hysterical. But I don't see Aaron. What the fuck? Where the fuck did he have gone? He had to pass me to get out. And I ain't that high. I know he didn't come past me. I couldn't have missed him. And he wasn't that fast. Then I noticed the window was open. I hear them slowly creeping up the stairs, telling me how they gonna blow my motherfucking brains out. I want you to understand, mind you, that all these events, as well as what I'm getting ready to tell you happened, were all within the space of about 3 or 4 minutes. It seemed like an hour, but they're happening really quickly. There's an old dresser in the room right at the front, right near the door. One of those old style antique dressers. It's very heavy. I close and lock the door to the room and try and move the dresser. But the room is carpeted and the dresser is very heavy and probably full, and it's very, very hard to move. I yelled at D, "Come help me, motherfucker." He did. He's afraid too. Reggie is sure to know now that he's up on this shit, and him and his girl know their ass is all the way out. Bam! Another shot comes through the door just as we've got the dresser in place. Pow! I let another one go. There's a huge difference between the sound produced by my 25 and whatever it is they're shooting. I figured it must be a 9mm or 45. Whatever the fuck it is, I don't want no part of it. Now I got just enough of a moment to go to the window. There's a sign that hung over the front door of the restaurant downstairs. It's about 6 feet over from the window. Gut fear will give you the nerve and the ability to try and even do some shit you would have never dreamed of attempting. You can't imagine the shock and disbelief of what I saw out that window. Aaron is about 3 feet from the window. He's gripping the bricks on the fucking wall with his fingers and toes like he was motherfucking Spider-Man. I swear to God. And out and was edging his way toward the sign over the restaurant. I'm looking in total awe and disbelief. Then I heard something behind me. The dresser is moving. It definitely took more than one of them to push this door enough to move that heavy motherfucker. Somebody's head is starting to come through the now cracked door. Just as his face was visible, I ran across the room. It only took about 2 or 3 steps. Stuck the 25 right in his face and pulled the trigger 3 times. It jammed, and the face disappeared in a hurry. It was replaced by a hand with a gun in it. Bam! Bam! Into the room. I'm defenseless, unarmed, and alone. I go to the window. I'm going to have to try and follow Aaron. I have no choice. He's almost to the sign, but he's still in my way. The door is opening. There's a guy squeezing through. I see a long gun. I imagine a shotgun. I squat in the window looking down. I look back again. He's aiming. I jump, still looking back. I see the fireball jump from the front of the shotgun. All this seems like in a slow motion dream. Just as I look down, bam, the ground was there. Without any mental or physical preparation, without the chance to brace myself, I hit the sidewalk. I literally saw the bottom part of my right leg fold itself in half. I felt a real eerie feeling in my lower back. My face is getting closer to the ground, and the ground is coming closer to my face. I stick my right hand out to push it away. Crack, crack, crack. The sound was my right wrist folding completely backwards. I thought silently to myself, man, you just fucked up. But strangely, I felt no pain, just panic. I hear Aaron say, get up, man. Come on, I'll help you. He helps me onto my left leg, and it gives out. I didn't know that the impact from hitting the sidewalk, unprepared as I had done, pulverized all the bones in my left ankle as if they had been broken up by a hammer. Back down I went. I hear footsteps and voices coming down the stairs. Aaron says, I'm going to get help. I start crawling. I'm dragging my right leg, which is twisting between the foot and the knee like a rubber band. I can't support weight on my right hand because the wrist is broken. My back feels really weak. I had 2 broken discs in my lower back. I look back over my shoulder, and there they are. I can even see a look of total shock on their faces when they see my condition. As I turned back and started to crawl again, I thought, damn, I'm about to die down here on the ground. I can't even stand up and try to fight back. As I crawl, my mind is bracing for what I'm sure is about to happen. This is where we break. To be continued.